All right, folks, we're coming in off a laugh. This is the High Tech Podcast, and I am one of your two hosts, William Illingworth, joined by my co-host, Joshua Swartz. How you doing my day, my friend? How you?
Whoa, what? I don't know what you just said, but I'm going to assume you asked me how I'm doing today, my friend. Not.
You got it.
See, that's what we call translation, folks. My translated wills, how are you doing my day today, my friend? I don't know what you said, but it was not what it should have been.
It was
anyway,
poetry.
I'm doing good-ish. As Will and I were sharing before we jumped in the podcast, I don't know if anybody listening can relate to this, but I was just gone for a day. And you would have thought I was gone for like a week.
You took one day off.
I took one day off to play board games. And it was a little hectic coming back today, but it's fine. It's the day ended better than it started. So
yeah, good.
We'll go that. Yeah.
Well, that's life, right? Like, you take a day off and you get punished for it on the other side. You take a week off, you get brutally beaten down by your inbox.
That's why I actually don't take vacations. I just don't come back. No, I'm just joking.
That's not a bad idea, frankly.
How hilarious would that be to be that guy who just, when he goes on vacation, he doesn't come back to the job? Like, that's always what happens.
Deuces. And nobody ever gives him PTO anymore because he just deuces like that. This is episode 195 of the High Tech Podcast. We're going to get into some fun stuff in a little bit about AI, of course.
Surprise. Don't worry, we're going to take a break from it in some episodes.
We are. Actually,
yeah.
we got a few.
Which should be good, because I got to be honest, I'm starting to get a little tired of talking about it every single day. That is my life right now.
That's fair. That is fair. I'm using it every single day, but I don't necessarily talk about it or have to you're dealing with policies and other things and trying to convince people. I had to do a whole rundown for somebody today at work, just like catching them up on a project, and I was like, oh, this is how we got to where it is. Like, here they came back from leave, so I was like, oh, here's where the project is.
Yeah. Now the AI does your job. Welcome back. You should
here's the 5 things I did.
No.
And goodbye. But that was good. So before we get into that, though, and before we even get into... No, never mind. I'll do this first. As always, all the social medias, all the subscribing, all the inboxes, all the websites, right? So you know us, at Hightech Podcast or at Hightech Pod. Our email is inbox@hightechpod.us, and our website is hightechpod.us. Connect with us, like us, share us, follow us, do the things that help take this conversation further. Or dislike us. It's
fine, too. We actually kind of find it fun when people dislike our video because we said something that somebody felt strong enough to click the dislike button, you know?
Yeah. That or somebody was like fat fingering like on their phone, like, and they just hit dislike, and they it gives us a chuckle.
Whatever. It happens.
Yeah.
You know?
It's all good. So do that stuff. And, we've been doing a lot of AI content. We are planning a couple of different tools upcoming, a couple of different conversations that we're going to enjoy and keep going with the AI stuff. But everyone's dealing with this, but not everybody. So if you're not one of those people that is dealing with it, you're not sure about AI, come on the podcast. Let's talk to you. Let's see if we can convince you to use AI or to take it a different direction or not. All that's at inbox@hightechpod.us. Email us. Slip into our DMs that way. Besides that, Josh was just saying he had a day off because we just finished the weekend-long
we should talk about that. Yeah, Gaming Con. So here's the deal, folks. We are nerds that has not been obvious been obvious on the podcast. I know we hide it so well. like
don't
those
lie.
who can see
don't
the
lie
video, it's like, come on. It's clearly hidden.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I haven't even added.
I
got a new thing that needs to be hung. That's the. It breaks down all of the things that happen in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. It's like a little thing that I got it with my Lord of the Rings map. It's in my office now. Yes. Anyway, that's a whole other side note. But yeah, so Will and I are nerds, and our friends are nerds for the most part as well, and the game group that we're part of. This all started because a friend of ours, it's funny because we literally just went to the conference. Like, it wasn't that long ago. Like, we went to a conference called PAX Unplugged, and we usually go, or at least parts of our group go every year, which is like a board game convention is basically what it is.
In Philadelphia.
Not basically, that is what it is.
That is what it is.
It's
not like it actually is.
It's not like it is it. That's a place, and it's what it is. Anyway, we members of our group go every year, but this next year, a lot of us just won't be able to go, and so a friend of ours was like, well, we should do our own mini convention, which turned into Games Gaming Con, and happened immediately in April. Like, didn't even like take like 3 months to become a thing. So we did that this weekend. Basically Saturday through Monday. Some of us took off Monday. Some of us who were committed took off Monday. Some people did not.
Not me. I did not.
No, Will was there for a day. Out of the three. But
in Oreos, I prefer the cream in the middle, so I went on Sunday, not Saturday or Monday, which is the cookies.
Some of us also just like to eat the Oreos, so we went for the whole
Josh went all weekend.
Right? Yeah, went all weekend. It was a lot of fun. We had a good time. Couple tournaments. I lost every single one of them in the same way, by the way. I don't know if you know this, but both tournaments. You were
a double loss.
I was a double loss. So we play these tournaments where we went up against each other, and several of us had what's called a bye, which means we don't play the first match because of the way the order broke up. I had to buy both tournaments, so I didn't play first game.
So technically, you did win a round.
Yeah,
you had
sure,
a bye.
but then I lost both real rounds both times in both tournaments. I got literally nothing.
Oh man,
dumb. But we had a lot of fun. It was a great time. So we just came off of that. Will and I are a little, board game crazy.
So good.
If you will. Will was very excited to play a game called Unmatched, where he got to play as Shakespeare, which
I'm in love.
Is apparently a god. So that's fun. But that was, yeah.
So I have not been. No, that's not right. I was beaten my first game with William Shakespeare, the character in Unmatched. And it was only because of my first game, and I have no idea how to play it.
And you were playing our friend Oliver, who tends to be the one who's better at all of these games than the rest of us.
He's very good.
He won both tournaments.
That's correct.
It wasn't rigged at all.
But since that first loss, Shakespeare has not lost. So I'm pretty excited by that. But it was a great time, great laughs, and like a tournament's fun. Everybody who plays board games, like it's a good time to sit down and go, digital free, get hands-on analog, but like the 1v1, like playing each other and like going up a tournament bracket was just a fun new experience. We had a great time.
I will say it did require us to play games that we don't get to play very often, which I think was a lot of fun. We do a game night every month, and so we tend to have some bigger groups sometimes, so we don't always play all the different games. So it was fun. We played a game called Unmatched, which is what the game Will experience was, which all of us are Alex and I are literally texting today about possibly getting more games. That's a thing for Unmatched. Everybody seemed to really like Unmatched a little bit more than Dice Throne, which was another one we did a tournament for. And there's a Ninja Turtles one coming out soon. So I think I'm gonna be getting the TMNT set. And
I want
Alex
to buy
is gonna get one of the other Legends sets. It's coming out. That was happening through a text conversation earlier. Anyway, that's not high tech podcast related. That's just fun.
That's just
life
that's
stuff.
Just us.
In case you didn't know we were nerds. This week, though, we're talking about another AI related thing. We kind of wanted to tackle this topic that Will and I think we find the most interesting about AI right now when it comes to teaching and learning. And so learning and development, right? So broadly, whether you're working in education, we know we have some people who listen to the podcast who work in education, whether you're a teacher or you work in ed tech or a designer, instructional designer, or you're designing trainings for employees, customers like Will does. There's this thing with AI that's interesting that's starting to pop up, which I'd put kind of in two kind of groups of thought, right? Using AI to help evaluate learning and growth. But also kind of, I think, more broadly, what people are calling kind of adaptive learning with AI. Would you agree, Will, that this is like a thing you're seeing start to come up into the conversation with how we use AI, specifically in like the learning and development field and training?
Yeah, and it's been there for a long time with the theory of how could we make learning that adapts to the learner, or how do we make learning that has enough differentiation, branching paths to make it interesting or renewable, or they could try again and get different results. Like that's been around for quite some time, but the field was blown wide open with the conversation of AI, because you can actually build enough content into a large language model with the right instructions to give a learner spontaneous and novel content on a subject. Like it's I don't want to say it's now easy. I think it still takes a lot of work to make learning that is differentiated but guided. But it's possible. I just don't think it was previously possible to do it in such a way that really reached the goal of differentiating. Like if I build branching paths in any tool, any platform, there's still me limited by how many paths I can think of. And time, right? You can't make 50 paths. So you might have 2, 3, 4, 5 paths. But like AI doesn't care. You just got to give it the right instructions. It could do 100 paths. We're in a whole new world here, and this is something that I think will change education? Question mark?
Yeah, it's a question mark because it's funny. I've been doing a lot of these webinars or sessions on AI, either both teaching them or being a participant in them, and the amount I do. I like to live, listeners. Just so you know, I like to live in what I call the skeptically. Nope, just the skeptic camp. I'll just put it that way. I like to explore. I like to play with stuff. I like all the ideas of what to work in. I'm also skeptical at the level of impact that some of the people are advertising it could be. I think it was Bill Gates recently being quoted on AI in 10 years. We won't have teachers. And people were like freaking out about that, but also laughing because I think it's Thomas Edison that said the same thing when electricity started to become a thing. Like for some reason, it's always teachers that we think we're going to get rid of when we create new technology. I don't know, but so I am skeptical at how much this is going to completely change education. One might argue that this would take education back to what it used to be in some ways, right? More individualized mentorship. Training. Right. I mean, education at its core in the beginning days before you had larger institutions and collegiate level stuff and the education system that we now know and understand used to be more individualized mentorship. And I think there's an argument that getting back to some of that, especially in certain places, is important. But go ahead.
Well, and I just say the last vestige of it is kind of the traditional PhD, or even I guess like kind of the European PhD model, right? Where you still like pretty much are mentored right through your doctoral process, and then your work is put up against other experts on your field, which like is not true of American education or American doctoral stuff, but like that layer or level of intense mentorship and work is so exclusive to the upper echelon of PhD. Like it's just not able to be done from K to 12 or in higher education.
Where you've got big student groups, and I think that's part of the problem, right? So let's kind of gather this problem a little bit of why we'd want this. And then some of you who do teaching or training can already understand why you'd want this, but for just everybody listening, let's clarify why we'd want this. I think through a couple stories, right? That Will and I's past experience, right? So Will and I both have experience in teaching and instructional design and technology and whatever other hat tricks we've decided to add to our
so
thing,
many hats
that we've done. But so example for me, I have two examples of where this would be more useful now as I'm looking at it, right? One, as I first started teaching some of my college courses, I had students from, and anybody who's been a teacher or a trainer can get this, I had students from a whole lot of different backgrounds, ones who were more familiar with what I was doing, others who were less familiar with what I was doing, right? And I had a class of 50 students. Even in that class of 50 students, how do I appropriately handle each need of each of those 50 students well, right? I'm never going to design on my own a perfect activity or assessments each week that are going to be able to adapt to the needs of each individualized student. And a lot of people would argue, well, then you make that up with the instruction and the interaction and the feedback. But the problem is when you have a class of 50 students, you only have so much time to do that with each student. And so a lot of teachers, this is the big struggle. But it's not just teachers, it's trainers too. Those who are doing training, instructional design, doing those fields, right? I've seen this in two different places I've been in. In education, when I was training people on how to use our LMS and Canvas, doing tech software training, right? I would have a room of 20 people. I'm supposed to be training them on how to use our LMS to make courses, right? And I'd have one who knows how to open their computer and click around in the class, and so I'm training them. But then I'd have an instructor who literally doesn't know how to refresh a page on the internet, barely knows their own password to get into their computer, right? How am I supposed to appropriately train each of those people in this environment? And one might say, well, okay, you don't do it in that live session, you do a course, you design it, do all of that type of stuff. But how do you design a course that can appropriately onboard that person who barely knows how to open the computer to get to the course while also keeping the attention and sustaining and appropriately training the person who is farther ahead. Right? And this is a common problem of why you end up having people who either think courses or trainings are way too hard, and some who think it's way too easy, because every learner is different with the experience that they bring. And this is why differentiation or adaptive learning is something that people have been, it's kind of like the unicorn people have been chasing, which is like, how do I do this well, right? And so I think some of that experience has led to stuff like what Will and I have worked on before, and this is what Will is referencing. So those of you who don't know what he's talking about here for a second, let me explain. When he's talking about branching learning, either your LMS or storyline, which we've talked about in the podcast before, I don't remember the episode number, it's somewhere, you can create what's called branching learning, right? So this is a situation where Will and I might build simulations or scenarios, quizzes, activities that, depending on how the student does on that assessment, the LMS or the system then branches them to a different assessment, right? So like a student who does better might branch to a slightly harder assessment or a different level assessment, while a student who needs to go through that content again or learn or apply that content differently, right, or go through more remedial stuff might go through a different branch, right? And so this is how we do different scenarios to or reinforce information, right? So if a learner really gets something, we're not going to keep hammering it to them 12 times in a row. They're just going to get bored and unmotivated. We want to send them to something else that's going to be challenging and push them. But a student who might still be struggling to understand a concept, we're going to take them through some different scenarios to get them around that concept. But what Will's talking about is it is extremely costly to build those scenarios. It takes a lot of time and effort to build them, and even by building them, that's getting you maybe 20 branches tops if you're lucky, and that's not usually good enough. I mean, Will, would you agree? In your experience, that's been kind of the scenario, trying to build that type of stuff out.
Absolutely, and I actually will I will intentionally loop our nerddom into this. One of our favorite games, The Witcher 3, has 36 possible endings.
Yes.
Right?
I may have replayed 7 hours of the game to undo an ending that I accidentally sent myself down. It's fine.
But as amazing as that is, like, the game was built by an entire team of every, I mean, like, you think about an entire game publishing house or whatever, like designing house, like, probably dozens of people were put at that one game to accomplish that possible 36-point ending. And, like, that means there's teams of people who are just writing all the narrative to get to 36 endings. Then there's teams of people who are creating all the visuals to get to 36 endings. And then there's teams of people who are recording all the audio. Like, I'm making a parallel here to, if you think about trying to create a course with 36 endings, you know, we can barely get an instructional designer and a quality assurance person and a multimedia specialist per course, right? Like it takes a lot of effort in higher education, especially, to get teams of people together to build courses. And you got a video game, you know, that takes, it's all just dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds of people to get that kind of push out. It's ridiculous. And yet, The Witcher 3 is like one of our favorite games because the replayability and the ability to change the story and experience it in different ways is so rich because so much effort was put into that. I can, you know, if you were to tell me, could we make a Witcher 3 course? Oh my gosh, I'd love that. Like, the idea of a course that could have room for so many different kinds of endings, so many different kinds of experiences, so many different things in the learning experience, it would cost millions of dollars. Like, that's why games, you know, that's why it's such a huge industry, video gaming. But now we think about trying to apply that same output and that same and create that same learning experience as you do that gaming experience. It wasn't possible. And I think today it is possible. And I know, like, you know, Josh, you're speaking to some of your teaching experiences. Some of mine, same thing. You know, if I've got, in Taekwondo context, right, a black belt in the room and a white belt in the room, like, I have to teach two different things. You know, it's just not possible to teach the white belt the same stuff that the black belt needs. The black belt can practice the white belt stuff, but they're going to get bored. They will get bored. And usually, in those cases, I just try and take the black belts and have them help me teach the white belts, as opposed to teaching the black belts the white belt stuff. You know, it just is what it is. You gotta be. This is not new to education. It is a large scale issue, and we can make this better now that we have AI. We can finally start to do this in a reusable, scalable way for traditional education, corporate education, non-formal or informal education. There's a lot of options.
Well, and I would make this even more complicated. The game example that Will's talking about, and those game examples, right? First of all, it's more story driven. It's not learner driven. Like the what you're really trying to do in a course essentially is like take learners down different branches that appropriately challenges them, repeats them through the stuff that they need to repeat through, teaches them what they need to teach through, so that they inevitably all get to the same ending. So they end up all getting to the same goal. It's the reverse. Like you're having them, and that means you don't know where they're starting. It would be like The Witcher 3 trying to design a game that starts people at whatever scenario they might want to start at, and they all get to the same ending. That's even more complicated because you don't have control over where the learner could go, and this is part of the problem with the built scenario systems that we're talking about, right? So like, those built scenario systems only can anticipate so much, and human learning is complicated. And it's not as easy, right, to do that. And so to actually really build those things, Will's right, it's been really costly, and it takes somebody who knows what they're doing. And a lot of instructors don't have time, or teachers or trainers or designers have time to do that for every single course and maintain it and do it well. Like, that's been a costly scenario. But where AI can come in, and where we're starting to see AI come in an interesting way in this is, so I think here's the big picture of how AI can help with this. Okay, there's two things that you can end up doing. Whatever AI solution you look at, right? What people are doing, they find their AI solution they're looking at. It's some kind of AI tool that usually involves some kind of chatting and back and forth and talking and scenario building. And they basically take all of the knowledge that they have, so all the course, right? All the knowledge, all the content, all of that stuff, and they plug it into those types of tools. Or they do it piece by piece if they don't have an enterprise solution to do this with. Like, I was just in a webinar with somebody who was talking about how they plug this stuff into Copilot. They get Copilot to help generate hundreds of possible questions, scenarios that a student might need to work with. They look through these real quick, make sure they're accurate, make sure that they're good, and they essentially build scenarios out of those questions using what AI generates to build that. Now, that still sounds like a lot of work to me, but imagine if you yourself, as a teacher, trainer, designer, had to write hundreds of scenario questions. Like, that's weeks of work to do that. That's not something that's easy to do very quickly. They're showing examples where they're using Copilot to plug in all the information that they have, generate those, double check them, and they're getting them done in like an afternoon. Like, that's the kind of quick speed, and then they're using that then to build out scenarios. So that's one way that you can do this, where they're generating a lot of questions and then they're building out all the different branches they want themselves in the LMS or through tools like Storyline. The other really powerful way that I've been seeing people do this is they get more of an enterprise solution with AI that can be plugged into a learning management system or a course. And there's a lot of different ways to do this. Will and I have seen baked solutions for this. We'll share one today. We've seen people like we follow on LinkedIn who literally just plug OpenAI through some tools into these tools to do this type of stuff as well. That's totally possible. But the point is, I'm seeing people do this on both those spectrums who have no coding experience and barely know what an LLM is actually doing. You don't need a crazy amount of experience to do this. I'm seeing practical instructional designers do this today with just a tool, right? And so what they're doing is then they'll plug all that information in and then plug in some parameters, right? So Will and I were showing this. If you want to know a little bit how you can plug in parameters for an AI, a lot of tools, I mean, Will, you'd agree, a lot of people are calling this scripts at this point for AI, which is kind of like defining what an AI can do. So if you want to know that, we did a Dust Buddy 2 series episodes where we talked about making AI buddies, agents. That was episode...
very recently.
Very recently. It was very recent. Go to hightechpod.us and you'll find it.
Episodes 190 and 191.
Will and I display how you can do this. You plug in information, you write parameters for it, and then you let the AI generate and respond with the student. And what ends up happening then is the student can respond. So I was just watching a solution like this do this. It was asking, I forget what the content was, but it was asking a student basically a question on something history based. And it asked them, okay, well, we're going to start with this. What's your experience? The AI tool actually asked them, what's your experience with this type of scenario? How have you experienced this type of scenario? So it gets them already like connecting information from history to something they've experienced or seen in a personal way. And it's actually even bypassing the ability to just get AI to respond for them, because it's asking them to personally connect to what's going on. But the student might respond back and go, I don't really understand this part of the scenario. The AI tool can literally respond back and go, you know what, let's try something a little bit different. And it gives them not a completely different, but like an adapted scenario. Or I've seen solutions where it's a simulation that they have to go through and they have to respond to certain questions. And depending on how they respond, the AI adapts and on the fly generates another part of the scenario that would better take them through a piece of the practice, right? I've seen this at an education point where they were using this to create a scenario where you're a teacher and you're dealing with an angry parent, and try to teach them through how to deal with those coaching situations. And the AI is live adapting to the students' responses, and the instructor can see all of this information, right? So like this is one example of where I've been seeing this happening more often. That's super powerful. The content, it's taking the content, it's adapting as they're responding.
Some of that actually reminds me of our episode 132 with alongside, right? Like not for teaching a course, but alongside was using this kind of responsive AI to help people with mental health, students with mental health and stuff like that, wrestling with issues in the classroom or in school. When, like you just said, if it asks you the question and you're like, you give a bad answer, it can be like, hey, well, maybe you won't get this. Like, let's pivot and go back to something else. Even just that language, how you talked about that, reminds me of my dad tutoring me through math, right?
Yeah.
Like, I was a kid and I wasn't getting something. He'd be like, oh, I'm really struggling with this long division and it's just not working. So he would stop and take me back to something else to help me try and build up to understanding the thing I was wrestling with. A human knows how to do that. And so we're saying, how do we take that thing that we're conscious of as humans to help others learn and program that in, script it into an AI agent, for lack of a better term, right? We're trying to make this an AI buddy that will be present in the learning process and help guide you along and scoot your butt a little bit. Come on, you can figure this out.
Well, and I'm seeing this take a step farther is it's not just even a tutor idea, it's that the actual assessments are the AI interaction. It's like the tutoring and the assessments all built into, it's basically like Socratic method of going back and forth in AI. And it's really powerful to see this happen. I saw an example where a student could tell the AI to change into a different language instantly. Like it changed into Mandarin. Like it just, like that, into the student's language. Like the ability to see, now that's more of an enterprise solution than what we're always talking about, but that's
sure
an idea. Another way that this happens, right, is let's back away from some of the bigger, crazier solutions, what we're talking about for a hot second, and let's just talk about some of the more like build up solutions, right? So like, let's go back to the solution of the person who was doing the OpenAI generating all the scenario questions for them.
Yep.
What they were doing then is plugging that into their LMS, and they built out a couple paths, but way more than they could have normally, which is basically just using every LMS usually, and like Storyline has this too, where you can kind of like set up a scenario where depending on how a student answers a certain question, that triggers them to go to a different question. Right? Yeah. Or goes to a different scenario, right, of what they're doing. And so, like, they're more homegrown building this because they don't have, like, some of these enterprise solutions, or they didn't have time to build in OpenAI solutions that are there. And so they've gone some of these directions where they're building out all these questions, and then they're using these questions to create more paths than they could have before. So instead of wasting a whole bunch of energy on writing questions, they're getting the questions and then spending a lot of energy on building more paths for students, so that they can go out in these different paths and what they're doing. And so like practically the way this works in like a tool like Storyline, like Will and I have done, is then you use that to build different questions, scenarios, simulations, activities, assessments that's going to get you data on how a student did, how a student responded. And depending on how long they took or what they responded on, you can then use that to trigger them down a different path. And even have the AI help create some of the paths and give you the information that you would need to do that.
An interesting point right there on the paving, Wow.
Path.
Semantic satiation.
Path.
Word become a sound.
Path making of the paths that need to be
There we go.
there.
Path
Yes.
making. I like that.
I don't know. Path making, sure.
In traditional context, even when you did do it, and let's say you were able to make 20 paths or whatever, typically it's still a branch. So I get to one point and I go these 2 points. AI has the functionality of like, AI could evaluate your last 3 answers and be like, oh, you start, it can kind of like see like, oh, if they pick C in all 3 of those answers, it's actually probably because they're understanding this the wrong way. Let's go this way specifically. Not, like in storyline without AI, I have to take them to question 3 and then they can go one of 4 places from question 3. AI could look at that and go, oh, you answered 1, 2, and 3 this way. I'm just going to take you over here to Georgia, and we're going to look at something because that's going to help you understand 1, 2, and 3 differently. Like, that's I think the capacity I was talking about as we open the episode. Like, you can do differentiated learning. It takes a lot of effort, but you can't do spontaneous differentiated learning, and that's what AI offers us.
Yeah, AI makes it a bit more spontaneous. I think there's 2 different ways it handles. It either helps you create the paths of learning better and quicker, or it creates, you can use solutions by plugging all your information in and having this kind of chat back and forth assessment type of format. You can have more live adaptive learning components. And then, but to get back to our question of really the episode, how does this help evaluate growth? If you do this, then what you're doing is you're getting live data on how the student interacted to start, how they interacted in the middle, how they grew, where the AI took them down the paths, and how they had to respond. So you can see maybe like this student started at question 1 in the simulation, but flew through the simulation. AI started taking them to more complicated things quicker. So you know what? That student's probably in a more of an advanced area of your course. They're growing a bit quicker. You can kind of maybe, that can teach you a little bit about how they're growing. You can maybe use them to help teach some of the other students and train other people in other scenarios, right? Because they're more advanced in those areas. But the other students who might be struggling, it can show you where they struggled, right? And where it took them time to grow and where they... So this gives you a lot more data then on the back end about how your student is interacting and where they started, how they grew in the middle, kind of how they went down that path. I mean, imagine it like AI is live drawing you a squiggly line of where they went, right? Like some students are going to go straight up. They're going to move up into other areas. Some students might have had to keep coming back and forth, and then they got over in areas. But it will show you, like, let's say, for example, you do this, right? And you see 90% of the students struggled with this concept a lot. Like, whatever it was. Let's say it was putting wheels on tanks. That was a difficult thing in Tank 101. And so I'm bringing it back for those who don't listen to the podcast as much. Tanks is Will and I's default course. So it does, they struggle with putting tires on tanks. Every student seemed to have to go back on that topic a bunch before they moved on. I don't know why. Probably because tires don't go on tanks. But whatever it was. So they had to keep going back and forth.
It distracts them.
So that will show you that, like, you know what? I need to cover that topic more with the group I'm training. Or maybe we need to refine how we present that information. Or maybe we need to refine what we're teaching. Maybe it's too complicated. Maybe the way we're teaching it's too complicated. Maybe we shouldn't give them a slide of 18 bullet points before they get into that scenario. Maybe. Pretty confident.
We shouldn't do that.
Yes. But the point is that's going to give you data on how your students are doing, or how the people you're training is doing, so you can better then improve their experience or come back in as the human mentor, teacher, trainer, and come back in and try to reinforce an area that they really struggled with in the scenario. That is so much more powerful than, here's where you screwed up in my 12-page paper. Or here's a guide to teach you how to click on all of these things in the software at work, and you didn't do it. Why didn't you remember those 12 things I told you? Here's the guide again that didn't work. Like, that's you know what I mean?
Just go back to the same guide, please. Right?
That's more powerful. Like, does that feel... I know, Will, you're mostly in, like, corporate customer training. Gosh, words have lost my mind.
Yeah.
But,
long day.
Like, do you see applications in that space as well for this type of stuff?
Yeah, and it's something we were wrestling with all the time, right? So you think about a product, and I'll just use Discord. I don't know, like Discord's a tool we use as gamers, nerds, but it's very popular for communications. How do you teach someone how to use Discord? Okay, I was stuck for about a month trying to figure out why I couldn't see this one channel that my buddy could see, until one of us finally clicked, like, oh, Will, you went in there and like hyper muted. There's like mute, and then there's like silence, and there's like hyper mute,
and then
I
that,
hyper muted
the mute that Will only is the person who finds somehow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, how do I find that? How did I just tinkered around, but like, what could it take to help you get there faster? And I think there's like Microsoft's not learning platforms, Office tools like Sheets, Docs, etc., and even Google's tried this a couple times, have started like trying to get rid of the ribbon and the toolbar and just do like search commands up at the top. And there's a little bit of me that says like, that's not AI, but imagine if that was Clippy. If Clippy was AI, and instead of being like, where's the filter button so I can slice this data a certain way in a spreadsheet, it'd be like, hey, Clippy, columns C and D need to do this, and Clippy just does the work, right? Like, there's a world, I think, where we think about these AIs being more integrated into the platforms we're using. And I think we're already getting there with some productivity software, things like Sheets, things like Excel. But if that was learning, if your Clippy, your little learning Clippy, was there with you at all times, helping you with the learning materials, challenging you in the assessments, if giving you feedback and evaluating you afterwards, and then feeding all of that back out to help, like, that would make the difference in my corporate education. That would revolutionize it, because I could install a little Clippy into our platform and it would do the work for me. It would help the learner, the user, just get through. You know, like, have you ever kind of using a software, you're just like, dang it, click here, click there, click here, and you keep going into different menus, but you never do something. Mm-hmm. What if Clippy was aware of that? Now it's Clippy AI that is in our software helping us.
I like that you just leaned into this Clippy thing. I mean, other people have made that connection. Will is not the first one.
Right.
Some would argue Clippy walked so that AI could run. You know, that's what some may argue.
I like that. Some would argue Clippy walked so AI could run. But if Clippy's in my platform and it notices I just clicked into 3 menus and didn't do anything, it could pop up and be like, hey, what are you looking for? Wouldn't that be, it's like it's an AI genie, you know? Just rub the lamp and, what do you want? Just give a wish and it would do stuff for you. Because at the end of the day, if the work that has to go into maintaining a Clippy is tweaking, making it faster, giving it better responses, you could do that with 1 or 2 people. Right now, our customer education unit includes 40 people. You know, like there's and I would hate to kill all those people's jobs, but it's like, if you had an AI buddy, an AI genie in your platforms with you, then you need somebody refining it, monitoring it, you know, changing things in the platform based on its feedback, but you wouldn't need an entire customer education unit because it would just be immediately available where the learner is. Give them the just-in-time resources. Every time you get a new feature, you know, they go to the new feature, it pops up, does some little tool tips, teaches them a little bit, does a song and dance, runs off the screen. Like, Clippy now in my mind is like the Lilo and Stitch of the internet. It's this little monster who just helps you and terrorizes everything else that you're doing at all times. I love this image in my mind. But
it is certainly an image of Clippy. That is something that's definitely been there. Yeah. No, and I think on the other end too, like, there are still tasks people are going to have to know how to do in tools, right? And so I think the other scenario is these AI tools in those trainings could help you build out scenarios where they actually have to practice in different ways of doing it, right? And different clicking spots, right? Like, I think about trying to train my instructors on how to create courses in Canvas, right? There's a point where I hope there's an AI tool that can kind of help them create stuff, but even in the middle of things, like, these AI solutions can help me to build more simulated experiences where they actually have to create a course in the training instead of just being told how to do it. And when they do different things different ways, it responds and adapts to that issue and kind of puts them in different scenarios that they'd have to go through. And I think that's a powerful option for these types of tools.
I think the value's here. I think that it's now more possible than ever, and I'm excited. I'd love to be at the helm of one of these initiatives, but I just don't see it happening in my work, my field right now. I'm stoked for the first person who pulls it off and makes this kind of integrated adaptive AI-based learning a thing. It's going to be cool, and I hope that it comes through. Do you feel like, though, there's an easy place for folks to start if they want to try this? Like I don't think it is too far from us to start making adaptive learning.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple different options, right? If you're more like in a space where you're like Will and I, and you can tinker with things and play with stuff, I think the easiest place to start with this is like getting or at least some kind of paid access to ChatGPT, so you get access to custom GPTs, because you can start to create stuff like this. We know that you can connect them into other tools and software to do some of these adaptive things. We've seen people doing it in Storyline. We've seen people doing it in other LMSs. And so I think that's one area that you could start in, right? Start to investigate that. If you actually think you have the wherewithal to build some of that stuff on your own, I've seen even some teachers doing some of that. If that isn't a good starting place for you, that sounds incredibly overwhelming. I get it. And there's a couple different solutions out there that are starting to get baked in now at this point. It's funny, I think, Will, you would agree, we've seen this like pendulum in AI and technology in education and learning and development. The first swing was, here are all the other versions of ChatGPT, but we have magic in the name. You know, like that's the I don't know what you're talking about. And like they're doing some interesting stuff, but it really was just what ChatGPT does, in some ways. And now we're starting, I think, to see more AI solutions who are like learning that, no, well, we also need to connect into the tools that people use. They need to be able to upload their resources. They need to be secure. And so you're seeing some enterprise solutions like that. And we're going to be sharing probably a handful of them over the next couple episodes, because, well, I have a lot of different options for them. But one that I picked up recently at a symposium is what they called it on AI. It's just a fancy word for conference. It's they were sharing a lot of cool stuff about AI, but there was a software tool there that impressed me. I got to see a demo and a full breakdown, and an institution near us has now piloted it and had a lot of good things to say about it. A disclaimer, I myself have not tried using this yet, but this is on my short list of solutions for when I am allowed to open up the floodgates and start doing this. It's called Alma AI, or Alma Learning. So the website's just almalearning.ai. They're mainly focused on education, but they have corporate solutions as well, which is interesting. But they're basically a tool kind of like what Will and I were talking about. You connect all your resources that you need into it, and then you can create these kind of scenario-based AI chat learning experiences that adapt on the fly and assess students' learning or learners in that scenario. So maybe you're listening to this and you're doing training with employees or faculty or whatever it may be. Faculty are also employees. I don't know why I reference them as a different category. I know sometimes they forget it, but they are. Oops. I said that out loud. My bad. Anyway. So this is a tool that can be used for that. And so the demo that I saw from the pilot that they used is, this is actually what excites me about this, is it integrates directly into the LMS that my institution uses, Canvas, and actually can be an assessment. So it showed an example of students interacting from a finance class, having to learn how to do some financing scenarios, and the AI would give them questions, and they had to respond to those questions, and the AI would adapt based on their responses of what they were doing. And it took them down tons of different scenarios for a period of time until they got to kind of the answer that they were supposed to get to. And then it graded them based on that information, and it provided that information then to the instructor, so the instructor could evaluate the chat conversation and all of that thing. Here was the thing that was really cool, that I thought was cool that Alma decided to do that not everybody does. The solution, because it's mostly education focused, could also tell when students were either taking way too long to answer a question or they were leaving the tab. And so instead of being like, you're leaving the tab, you're punished, it would speed up its questions. Which I just think is like the most hilarious passive-aggressive move. Like, you're not paying attention, I'm going to quiz you faster now. it's ramped up, and or it would say stuff like, "I see you're doing this, please come back," kind of focus in. It was adapting on what the student was doing, and I thought it was really cool. But it would then record all of that for the instructor, so the instructor could tell when students were either maybe trying to copy and paste something from another website and post it into Alma. And actually it looked like Alma could track like Control-C, like it could track pasting. Yeah, real quick, something that was really cool about Alma too is that students could respond in audio. So instead of typing, they could just talk to Alma and Alma will respond. It was pretty sick. Like, it was cool how it worked. So Alma could switch languages mid-chat as well. This is one of the examples I was talking about that just could like switch chat languages like immediately. So it has a lot of accessibility components too. This is the really cool thing about AI. This is another conversation for a different time, but like, people don't realize how much AI is actually changing the accessibility game of learning, because it's making it much easier for learners who come from other languages or struggle in different components to engage in learning in a way they couldn't before, because it is more personalized in some ways. And so it's really interesting. So Alma was really cool for that. I will say this, Alma is not free. It is not an entirely free tool. And I'll just be upfront with you. Most of these enterprise solutions who are going to do this at a scalable solution are not going to be free. They're just, it's not the game we're in right now, unless you want to know how to connect stuff. But I think that's okay, because the amount of savings that's found in other places by leveraging these tools is incredible. So I think it's definitely worth checking out. So I will say their basic plan, it's not super cheap. It's $10 per learner per course, which can add up real fast. But it comes with all of this tailored experience, 24/7 interactive voice and text-based tutoring, multi-language support, and like I said, real-time analytics, student progress summaries, and dedicated personal support from them as a company, which I think is incredibly important. Honestly, you're right. That's not that bad. For that type of thing, that's not actually a bad. There have been much bigger purchases wasted on worse solutions for students to be included in their price plan. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. So I definitely say if you're looking to do something like this, even at a small scale, it looks like Alma's a good solution for this. Like the institution I saw only piloted this in a handful of courses. And they did articulate, they did evaluations from students and stuff, and at large, almost every student said they would 100% recommend this to be in future courses. The student feedback was incredibly positive from what I understand from the piloting. So that's why I wanted to kind of highlight it, because I know there's a lot of solutions out there, and this gets at what Will and I are talking about. It's trying to do what Will and I are talking about, and it's a solution that could make it much easier for you if you're not willing to dive into the deeper end, if you will, of some of the connections with OpenAI and custom GPTs and stuff that Will and I have investigated, or are investigating in different solutions. So I definitely think it's worth checking out. So we will link that in our episode notes on the episode page at hightechpod.us for this episode. Make sure to go check it out. Again, a reminder, on top of that website, follow us, like us, subscribe, hit the bell, tell us that you're there. That would be great. On any of the socials and YouTube, at High Tech Podcast or at High Tech Pod. Emails inbox at hightechpod.us if you want to tell us you disagree with something, or you liked something we said, or you want to say hi, or you want to talk to Will, because he's usually the one who responds to the emails. You can go check that out, inbox at hightechpod.us if you'd like to be on the podcast. You have an AI solution that you're using. We'd love to hear from you, both whether you're an instructional designer, you're a trainer, you're a teacher. We'd love to get some more people up in the podcast here who are actually using this in their fields. So make sure to hit us up at inbox at hightechpod.us to make that happen. And again, our website is hightechpod.us. All right, folks, this is a wrap on another week. Empowering minds.
Embracing tech. Cheers.
Cheers.